What up, you guys? Welcome back to Feral Publications YouTube channel, Feral Publication where weird calls home. As many of you guys know, I publish a zine called Feral Comics. It's a comic book zine anthology that has different variations of stories. I thought, why not show you guys some of the stuff that I've been working on, things that you can expect to see if you happen to get a yearly subscription to the Feral Comics project. So this first one here was something I was going to call When Gods Cry, and it was this idea of a superhero having a mental breakdown and ultimately resulting in like a lot of human casualties and devastation, and kind of him dealing with the aftermath of his meltdown and trying to figure out who he is and what he needs. And this is concept that I've had for a while of like, what would a therapist for superheroes look like? How would they be able to help them? What would that even consist of? And what do they do when they figure out that someone is mentally unstable and can't stay where they're at, right? Like this guy ends up becoming this threat, viewed as a threat by the therapist, and then they have to basically take him out. And it's like just something I was toying with. A lot of these sketches here that you're seeing, this is when I just play with the idea and I'm just trying to figure out the characters and figure out kind of some of the banter and what's going on. This really wouldn't be how it would end up being, right? Like a lot of this stuff never really makes it into the comic. As you can see, like a lot of really hard pencil sketches. But this is just me trying to figure out the characters. And I have a few other sketches in my sketchbook where I was kind of figuring out this concept of this fella just like destroying a bunch of buildings and things and crying over something so simple and human as like his loved ones dying in a car accident, right? Like no supervillain or anything like that. It was just something that simple, and it sending him into some sort of mental breakdown where he just doesn't know how to cope or deal with these things. He's not even rationalizing or understanding like why it is that he lost these folks, not understanding that it's just a system of probabilities, and that at any given time now, someone that you love could die. So this is something that I do plan on finishing, so look forward to this one. This one here has no name, and I really was getting further along in it, but basically it's my version of a crime comic. And the way I've always viewed crime comics, and I felt like there's something missing in them, is that, and I myself feel like I'm a goon, right? So like, not the smooth criminal, not the smart aleck, none of that stuff, right? Not the crime boss, but like the henchman, And so this is like the story of a henchman, not necessarily even becoming a crime boss or anything like that, not his ascension into the crime boss, universe, but rather just him being a dumbass and being a grunt and really gooning his way through really bad situations and having a boss and hating his boss and all this stuff that I picture and assume that a goon would feel. So you guys can see how much I do that just doesn't see the light of day, right? So like this was the first page. This is gonna be page 2. Double splash page, something I hadn't done before, and I said, you know what, I should do that. These little bootleg Foot Clan members. He's just like, they're all staring at him. He's just like, oh shit, so you guys are robbing me? And they're all just looking at each other. These are like these other crime bosses, because you'll find out later on throughout the story that this goon just owes everybody money, and that's why he has to be a goon for them, because it's the way he basically saves off having to pay what he owes them, is by ultimately picking up hours for this mob, boss or whatever, for whatever time. And that's why a lot of the henchmen are interchangeable between them, right? It's just an idea that I had. And that's it. And this is one of the things that I started doing nowadays, is that I actually take the time to find kind of these locations and the way I want it to kind of look. But so this one was one of them as well. Here goes one that actually I can't wait to finish it. But basically it's this idea that I had of a lucid dream, and it's gonna be all splash pages, right? I've done a wordless comic before, but I've never done a wordless comic that was full splash pages. And so that's one of the things that I really want to do with this one. And it has no name other than it's just the premise of a lucid dream of a cartoonist. And there is a story that unfolds, but I'm gonna not spoil it, but ultimately I'll give you guys kind of the frame of it, right? Because sometimes when I'm making a comic, the story is what really leads, and sometimes it's more the playground kind of leads. And this is one of those where it's the playground that's going to lead the story. And so the idea is that I'm falling asleep as a cartoonist, and then I fall asleep. And when I fall asleep, I'm trying to like muster myself, and there's all this weird, just like cartoonist nonsense that's in my head. At which point, you know, there's going to be all kinds of weird shit here. And I put a toilet here only because when I was doing the Death by Diarrhea series, I had such a hard time drawing a toilet that it's really stuck with me. This idea of like, how do you draw a really good looking toilet? And I'm not even convinced that I'm there yet, but like drawing a toilet, I went on a big binge of like seeing how other people draw toilets, because it was so novel to me, this idea of drawing a toilet and drawing a good toilet, that it stuck with me. But the idea is that I go through this whole maze of a lucid dream as a cartoonist. And so I was really excited about it because it gives me the opportunity to draw a bunch of random fandom shit, you know? And anytime you can do that and have fun doing it, why the hell not? So this one right here, it is what it looks like. This is something that I was gonna do, but I just never ended up finishing it. And this occurred because my cat, Tiggy, who some of you guys probably have seen in videos, she used to sit and watch me talk. She passed away from cancer. And so I was taking her to the vet, and they were doing all this stuff to her. And ultimately, I just wanted to do a story of me going through, you know, what my cat was going through and not fully understanding it inside of this cat world. So the cats are all, you know, poking and picking and probing me, you know. So it was an idea that I had. And when she passed away, I just couldn't really finish it. But maybe one of these days I will return to it. Maybe not in this way, maybe not the cat world, just because you know, I don't know, maybe not that way, but some other version of it, some other variation. You know, maybe aliens come and they use humans as meat, and so then they treat us like we treat cows. I don't know, something like that. Oh, here goes another one that I had an idea for, and it was just, this is the reference page, is this idea of there's a band that I like that's called and they have a song called The Human Fly. And so this really came from that, this idea that like a human fly would want feces to eat and to devour. And so then this human fly is holding people up hostage inside of a toilet and having them poop in bags for him to eat it. This is just a quick comic strip idea that I had. Nothing too crazy, but I definitely will be finishing this up, and this will be in one of the later issues of the Feral Comics project. And this is one of those, you know, 4 panels that sometimes outgrows the 4 panels, but the idea is that ultimately my wife talks about how she can't wait to go home. She doesn't like doing overtime because she wants to go home and relax, not realizing that our house is chaotic and messy because we have dogs, cats, they're all seniors, they're all these wild personalities, and they have this barbaric goon Homer-esque husband at home that is just loud for no reason and doesn't know how to organize anything. And this one right here, like I said, I'm getting better at actually printing out reference pages of kind of like some of the shots and images and what it would look like and what would the folds of the bed look like, you know. And like, and going back to that point of like, I don't do it verbatim, so like a lot of my references don't look, you know, picture perfect to the reference. Like that's not what the point of it all is. It's more just kind of for the layout to understand kind of what it is you're trying to do. But one of these I actually did finish, and this is one of them, but I wanted to do a longer version of it. And so here I think you can see better the reference versus my version of it, right? And that the idea of this is basically wise words to say before you die. And so the idea was like the gag was going to be all this random stuff that sounds really silly. Like, what do you tell someone as your last dying words in an attempt to impart wisdom? And it's like, and does that wisdom really hold? And so it was something that I found interesting as a premise, and I thought it was something that you could make it into a 4-panel kind of comic strip that continuously goes through. And this is the one that I had started last year as well, and it's actually what kind of birthed this Feral Comics issue, was this idea of a Xena, you know, fanzine, this lost episode of Xena, which originally this was the cover that I wanted to use for that story, and I ended up using it in issue 25, which was the Betty and Veronica fanzine, where they're also sharing in the Xena fandom. And I really like this Xena splash that I did. But so basically, when I ended up doing this zine, this one came because it was more fun and lighthearted, and I thought we needed that as a community. But I never got done with the Xena original comic that I had started, and this is the one that's going to be next, because I've been working on it quite aggressively, and I think it's going to be really good. And this is some of the sketches, because I had to figure out kind of how to draw Xena, and I landed on this. I was going to do Gabriella with a longer face, but I didn't want them to be the same height, so I ended up changing them to this. Right, so like Gabriella looks way smaller than Xena. Not necessarily Xena doesn't look more muscular, which I had originally, kind of considered. But, I like, for the most part, the way the characters came out. Here goes that original page that ended up going into the Feral Comics issue 25, the Betty and Veronica zine. Some of my notes. Here goes some of my reference pages, right? Going back to that idea of like, not verbatim, but like, it helps me like look at the characters and really try to understand, what it is about this that stands out, that really creates the illusion or allure of like, that's that character. And I think, like I said, I really like the way the character designs came out for this one. Right, and here goes the cover. Right, so I'm not going to show too much of this one, just because it's almost done, and the last punchline and the gag of it all, I don't want to, put out. But it's basically, one thing I do like that I did was like skip intro, and basically they do. So it's assuming like you're watching this on a streaming service, right? So you skip intro and then you skip it. And so there's not going to be that intro that I normally do on them. So that's going to be skipped. And that page right there is way later in the story. And, here goes one where I kind of messed up. And so like, my lettering came out fucked up, so I did this, and it's worked out. But yeah, this one's gonna be done sooner than later, and will be actually the January issue for Feral Comics. So really excited about that. Like I said, I've been having fun, really getting my groove and understanding what I'm up to, And so just assume and expect really good things for Feral Comics this year. So if you don't have a subscription to the Feral Comics project, you might want to consider getting that now. Alright, there'll be a link in the show notes where you guys can do that. Besides that, man, thank you so much for everyone that's been showing love and support to the channel, to what we're doing. Appreciate you guys. And with all that said, lates.